I had a lot of things to talk about, but I had no internet yesterday. Yay!
Inside, and a beauty! Hall running free! Brees Hall inside the 10! He's gonna score!
What is going on, guys? Welcome back to Talking Just with Tigo. My name is Tigo, and today we're going to be doing the Talking Just with Tigo podcast, and we're going to make up for the fact that I didn't have internet yesterday, at all, and I had no ability to look up or do or record or upload any videos, so all of the talking about the Vikings game and everything is going to be in this podcast. We're going to spend, obviously, the beginning of the video talking about the NFL, the games, the scores, what surprised me, what didn't surprise me, the standings, things that we want to talk about around the NFL. So let's just hop right into that. I think the first thing that we have to talk about is the Bills and the Patriots game. Obviously, that was Thursday Night Football. The Bills won that game, helping, obviously, the New York Jets in their playoff aspirations. If you had to pick a team to win and you had to pick a team to lose or vice versa, I think you would want the Buffalo Bills to win just because, New England winning wouldn't have helped us out. They would have put them closer to us, and that's that. Packers barely beating out the Bears, in my opinion. I know the score was 28-18, or 28-19, I'm sorry. But that felt like a game that was just so close until it wasn't. And obviously, I think it's just the Aaron Rodgers effect kind of a thing, right? He just goes out and wins you games like that every once in a while, and he seems to do it consistently against the Bears. The Steelers-Falcons game was one that I found really, really interesting. I have a couple of friends who are Steelers fans, obviously, and I just don't believe in this Steelers team, personally, and I kind of believe in this Falcons team, and I don't think the Falcons are going to make a run or that they're super good or anything like that. I think these are two bad teams, but I think that right now, if I had to take my bet on a team or even a franchise that I think is going in the right direction, I think the Falcons are going in the right direction. Kyle Pitts and Drake London and Arthur Smith is an excellent head coach, in my opinion, and they've got things going there. They're in a good spot, especially moving forward. They can move forward relatively well. Where I think the Steelers are kind of. I think they believe that they're a competitive football team, and I just don't think that they are, and I think it would be better served for everybody if they just started the rebuild, and it doesn't seem like that's a popular opinion. One, among Steelers fans, but two, in the organization. I think you've got to reset that rebuild. You've got a couple of bad contracts. You got too many holes to fill. But the Steelers winning out over the Falcons surprised me. I like the future for both of these teams. I just think that the Falcons are going to get there first. And that's why I had them winning, or I picked them winning, and I was surprised when they lost. Jags and the Lions, man, what a blowout. It's honestly surprising when you take a look at the franchises and the teams and the coaching staffs and just the players that they have and all of that stuff. My expectation going into this was that the Panthers were going to win. If you had to, that would have been my guess, is that the Panthers were going to win that. Not the Panthers. The Jaguars were going to win that. Why did I say Panthers? I believed in the Jaguars. I like Doug Peterson and what he's doing in that in Jacksonville with Trevor Lawrence and all those weapons that they have and things like that. I know that they don't have a defense right now, and the defensive coaching staff just isn't doing a good job in Jacksonville. But that being said, this was an excellent outing by Detroit, and it's one of those things where you're just do you want to be good right now if you're Detroit? There are a lot of things at stake right now, the future of your franchise, and it's one of those things where it's just I know you can never really convince a team to lose or anything like that. And I guess that they're really more banking on Detroit losing. But the more they win, the worse off their team is moving forward. Detroit's not a competitive football team right now. They don't have a quarterback for the future. I just find it relatively interesting. But I like that coach. I forget what his name is. Biting kneecaps, super fun, super interesting. Great stuff. there. Titans and Eagles kind of came out exactly how we expected, right? The Titans, while interesting, are a limited football team, where the Eagles are interesting and they have a whole bunch of talent, and it's the revenge game for A.J. Brown. They traded him away instead of re-signing him, and so there's that. I really, really hope and wish a very, very healthy and speedily recover to Treylon Burks. I don't know if you guys saw that catch, but what a catch and a way to hold on to the ball, and then he looked like he died, and I hope that everything's okay. I have not looked up to see that. Texans versus the Browns was a fun game. I think the Texans were America's team that day, and they failed all of us losing that game. But man, Deshaun Watson did not look good at all against, by far and away, the worst team in the NFL in the Houston Texans. The Houston Texans almost don't have a single redeeming piece on that team where, like, they should hold on to him long term. Like, I think it really comes down to what? Derek Stingley, who's been okay, Jalen Petrie, who has been a revelation, Dameon Pierce, and I think that's really it. I wouldn't hold on to either one of those tackles. I think they're valuable assets. I think you should probably trade those away. Cooks wants out anyway, right? So trade him away and get whatever you can for him. It's just the Texans are not a good organization. They're not a good franchise right now. And it just seems like they're going to be on another one-and-done head coach. And Lovie Smith absolutely not deserving of an NFL head coaching job right now, especially with the way his team is playing. Commanders-Giants ending in a tie was a massive, massive disappointment. I really wanted one of them to walk away with the win, but it does have pretty big implications for the playoffs, because now they each have half a win, and now they're both at the bottom of the NFC East, which I think is interesting. Man, the Ravens can't get anything going without Lamar Jackson. I think it's I've been very open and honest about that. I'm not the biggest Lamar Jackson fan. I don't believe that you can win I don't think you can have sustained winning and really be a playoff contending team running a team like the way that the Baltimore Ravens do with Lamar Jackson under center. I think he's going to be a regular season hero and then a playoff zero, kind of the opposite of what Eli Manning was, right? Eli Manning was a regular season kind of whatever, and in the playoffs, he just turned something on, and he was just different, right? That's why he's undefeated when he went to the Super Bowl. Lamar Jackson comes out, and man, that team couldn't get anything going against the Broncos, who are a bad football team right now. They are in disarray. They can't get anything going either, and they barely, and I mean barely, squeak out a win. Very interesting, in my opinion, to see that kind of stuff from the Ravens. I know that the Ravens are incredibly hurt, which just seems like another year where they're going through a bunch of injuries, but that's crazy. And speaking of injuries, man, Jimmy G can't get a break. The 49ers beat the Dolphins, which is absolutely fantastic if you're a Jets fan and you're hoping for a playoff run, obviously. 33-17. Brock Purdy absolutely showed up, balled out against a bad, obviously, Miami defense. 25 of 37, 210 yards, 2 touchdowns, and interception. They really relied heavily on Christian McCaffrey. Obviously, when your starting quarterback goes down and you're at this point on your third string quarterback, because you started with Trey Lance and then Trey gets hurt for the year, so then you put in Jimmy G, who you were expected to cut or trade, and then Brock Purdy has to come in because Jimmy G breaks his foot. It sucks because Jimmy just can't get a break. Like, he just can't get a break at all. But when you have a weapon like Christian McCaffrey that can, on any given night, do exactly what he just did and give you 140 all-purpose yards, you can win games, especially when you're playing a bad defense like the Dolphins have. The Dolphins don't have a very good or compelling defense right now. They're going to win games on their high-flying offense. That's how they're going to do it. They've got 2 of the best wide receivers there, and they've got a great offensive coordinator / head coach, obviously, combo there in Miami, who's going to dial up some fantastic offensive plays that are going to get Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle open and get the ball in their hands quickly and in space. You can see they lead the league in yardage from the wide receiver position. Absolutely phenomenal. But the 49ers winning, absolutely fantastic for the New York Jets. Seahawks, Rams went the way that I expected, Seahawks winning, but I didn't expect the game to be as close as it was. 27-23 for the Seahawks. Very interesting. Like, just because the Rams aren't a good football team right now. They are annihilated with injuries. They're playing John Wolford. I think this is their third backup quarterback that they're playing or something like that. Kind of crazy to see there. But they're just not getting it done. You really got to start asking the question with Los Angeles. And I know the answer if it was me, if it was the New York Jets and they were like, and you were asking me my opinion on it. But you really got to ask if you're a fan of this team, right? And if you're a fan of the Los Angeles Rams, you got to go, is the one Super Bowl ring worth the next couple of years of what might be average football play? Like, you've leveraged and mortgaged your entire future for that one ring. And then the idea that it would be sustained success. Now, obviously, Matthew Stafford is hurt and he's your quarterback. And when you lose your quarterback, the chances of winning anything go really, really down the dumps unless you're Nick Foles or anything like that. But it's just an interesting conversation to have. I think it's worth it. Bringing Lombardi home and being average or adequate for the next 5 to 6 years or whatever, you sign me up. If I'm a Jets fan and you say, hey, you get to win one Super Bowl, and then every year after that, you're going to be 9-8, 8-9 in the playoffs, all that kind of thing, and you're going to be competitive for like 5 or 6 years, I would sign up instead of saying over the next 10 years, you'll guarantee a spot in the playoff all of those 10 years, but you'll never win. I'd rather win the trophy. Like, being competitive doesn't matter if you don't win the Lombardi. And I might be in the minority there, but I believe in the mindset of winning fixes everything. And when you can win the hardest trophy to win in your sport, obviously in the NFL, it's the Super Bowl, and winning the Lombardi, when it's the hardest thing to do in this sport, if you can do it, man, even once, I think it's worth it. Look at the Philadelphia Eagles fans. And obviously, they're in a position where they can run it back. But look how many years it's been since Carson Wentz and how mediocre the Eagles have been since then. And if you asked any of them, I think they'd all say it was worth it because they got one. Sustained winning in the NFL is a thing, is an anomaly, not the norm. Like, that's why the Patriots run was so historic, because that's not a normal thing to happen. Moving on to the next game, a game that I hoped was going to end this way, but I did not believe in my heart of hearts that it was going to end this way. Future New York Jet quarterback, I don't know, actually, that's just a joke, but Derek Carr was able to outduel Justin Herbert. The Raiders won 27-20, and it wasn't really Derek Carr. I just wanted to make the future quarterback joke. Really, Josh Jacobs was a game wrecker, and then Devontae Adams with half of the receptions for the Vegas Raiders, 177 yards. Man, the Chargers are starting to turn into a team that might be reaching fraud status, right? And this is not Justin Herbert's fault. This is not Austin Eckler's fault. This is not Keenan Allen's fault or any of those guys. I don't know about this coaching staff in Los Angeles, specifically for the Chargers. This is a team that should be winning football games. This is a team that should be competitive. They've traded for, they're doing all the right things when you look at personnel and just the players and the talent that they've acquired, and they have not been able to win games. They are 6-6, and I had the Chargers not only coming out of the AFC West as the leaders, because the only 2 games they lost to was Kansas City, but I had Kansas City losing more games in the regular season because I had them losing to the Buffalo Bills, and that's besides the point. I thought the Chargers were going to be insanely competitive, and they're just not this year. They are at 500. They lost to one of the worst coach teams in the NFL, one of the most mismanaged teams in the NFL. The AFC West should be a cakewalk for Kansas City and Los Angeles. You've got the Denver Broncos, who are absolutely atrocious, one of the worst football teams in the NFL, and the Las Vegas Raiders, who are being mismanaged in such a astronomical way. It's insane when you take a look at how bad they're being mismanaged. And for you to lose this game, especially when, you're trying to make a playoff run and there are 9 teams competing for 7 spots. You can't be dropping games at this point, because now who goes ahead of you? The Jets are ahead of you. You tie with the Patriots now, which you don't want. The Cincinnati Bengals are ahead of you now. You're farther away from the Kansas City Chiefs if you thought maybe you could try to catch up to them. It's just not a good look for the Chargers, and I don't know, truthfully and honestly, what to expect from them moving forward. We'll talk about it in our next in a video later today, obviously, which is predicting what the scores are. No, I think that's tomorrow. Yeah, that's tomorrow. Today you're gonna get my power rankings. But the Chargers versus the Dolphins, I thought the Chargers could win that game. I don't think that anymore. We'll see. Next game, Chiefs and Bengals. Obviously, we wanted the Chiefs to win because now the Bengals are above the New York Jets when it comes to the playoff standings, because now they're 8-4, and obviously the New York Jets lost to Minnesota. And we'll talk about that in a second, falling to 7-5. But the Cincinnati Bengals seem to have Kansas City's number, don't they? They are such a good football team. They do incredibly good things when it comes to how high-flying their offense is. And I want to know your guys' opinion on something. So let me know in the comment section below. Tweet it at me if you haven't, if you're not following me on Twitter. I want to know what your guys' thoughts on Joe Burrow are. Now, I have Joe Burrow as a really good quarterback, but I don't have him in that elite status, right? I think there's 2 elite quarterbacks right now, and that's Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes in no particular order, either one of those guys. And then they're in tier 1, right? And then in tier 2, you've got a whole bunch of other quarterbacks, and that's where I have Joe Burrow in that tier. And I have a lot of people that were like complaining or mad at me or whatever because I said that, and they were like, how are you not putting Joe Burrow in the elite? And I go, I don't know if he's elite. I'm not saying that he's not elite. I'm saying I can't really evaluate if he's elite or not, because look at that team that's around him offensively. You've got 3 wide receiver ones that you're throwing to, a top 10 running back in Joe Mixon, arguably a top 5 running back in Joe Mixon, a top 20 running back in Samaje Perine, in my opinion, a great offensive coordinator and head coach who are calling and scheming up offenses that take advantage of your guys' assets. Like, it's one of those things where I'm holding off on calling Joe Burrow elite because I want to see him when he doesn't have all these things, when he gets paid, and you're going to have to lose T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd because you're going to have to pay Jamar Chase to keep Jamar Chase. What happens when you have to lose Joe Mixon because you can't afford to keep that running back, and now you've got to run that running back room and that offense with only Jamar Chase and only, a Samaje Perine type of guy. It's a different conversation because there are quarterbacks that carry franchises and there are quarterbacks that get carried by their franchises. And there are 2 quarterbacks. There's really 1 quarterback right now, in my opinion, in the NFL that carries a franchise, and that's Patrick Mahomes. Josh Allen is close, but he's dealing with something right now where he doesn't look 100%. It might be that elbow injury that he received at the New York Jets game the first time around. But that being said, those are the only 2 guys that I would say you can put them on any team in the NFL and they're probably going to be winning games because they make the players around them better by just being there. Tom Brady was like that for a long time. Do you remember those years they were still making the playoffs? And obviously because the AFC East was really weak, but Tom was throwing to fans that they were signing on 1-year deals off of the stadium, out in the stadium, and they were running the playbook and writing it on each other's hands, kind of a thing. And Tom was making those guys look like NFL wide receivers, and they weren't. And so there's only 2 of those guys, in my opinion. And so let me know what you think about Joe Burrow, because I'm really interested about that opinion of mine and what the rest of the world's consensus is. I don't know. And the last 2 games, Sunday Night Football, we had the Cowboys absolutely annihilating the Colts. That was murder. Absolute murder. They shouldn't be allowed to do that. That was disrespectful. That was mean. It was just unnecessary, in my opinion. 54-19. What a game. Helps out Dallas, obviously, in the playoff standing. They're trying to catch Philly, but Jesus, man. What did the Colts ever do to the Denver Broncos, the Dallas Cowboys? It's insane. And then Tom Brady barely squeaks out a win on the New Orleans Saints and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Absolutely insane. It just goes to show you that not all coordinators are good head coaches. And I think that this comes to affect more and more and more every single time I see Todd Bowles step out there and have to head coach a football team. Todd Bowles is an excellent defensive coordinator. He is, in my opinion, one of the better defensive coordinators in the NFL. I love what he does, but he's just not a good head coach. He shouldn't be an NFL head coach, and we need to realize, and I think not we, because the Jets know we've hired Todd Bowles, but we need to realize as an NFL, I think as a whole, that the hiring process and the evaluation process of coordinators needs to be better, because not every coordinator is going to make a good head coach, and not every bad offensive coordinator or defensive coordinator doesn't mean that they can't be a good head coach, right? Head coaching is a different role. It's a different job. You got to be a leader of men instead of an X's and O's guy. And so, yeah. And then obviously, let's go over the standings, right? The playoff standings, all that, and how it looks right now, and what the playoff picture looks like. If the season were to end right now, the New York Jets obviously make the playoffs in the 7th seed. They would face the Kansas City Chiefs in round 1, and that's not ideal. But at least we would make the playoffs, which is fantastic. Now, like I was saying, there are teams that are really, really close, and the Patriots and the Chargers, they're both 6-6 when it comes to making the wild card spot, and the New York Jets obviously losing to the Minnesota Vikings was a big, big deal. Now, the NFC has gotten a lot more interesting because obviously the Eagles are running away with the number 1 seed. The Vikings are at the number 2 seed, but the 49ers, who were my favorite to be the representation for the NFC in the Super Bowl, in my opinion, I really like what San Francisco was doing, now gets hurt at quarterback. Brock Purdy's not there. There's a lot of questions around what San Francisco can do. Now, the Carolina Panthers are going to release Baker Mayfield, and I think Baker Mayfield, I know that he did request to be released, and the Panthers are cool with that, and they're going to let him go, and they're going to let him walk. And I think he was hoping that he could try to make it to the San Francisco 49ers. And if I'm the San Francisco 49ers, I don't know if I'm interested in that. Baker Mayfield comes with a very limited ceiling, and we know what a limited ceiling quarterback can look like in a San Francisco-style offense. So I'm not saying that he wouldn't have success in that offense. But what I am saying is Baker Mayfield is a very specific type of character in the locker room, and I don't know if you want that in your locker room. It kind of comes down to, I don't know who's available at quarterback. I don't know who's out there. I don't know what can be done or had or anything like that. But Brock Purdy didn't look that bad. Maybe you just run it back and you just run it with Brock Purdy. You've got time. That's the good thing, is that I think Baker Mayfield does clear waivers ultimately, just because of his contract. I don't think anyone's going to want to take his contract on. Even this late into the year, it's a pretty big cap hit. So if you want to make a last-minute move or something like that for a playoff run and bring in a free agent or anything like that, it's just an interesting conversation. The NFC looks incredibly, incredibly dynamic. And obviously with the Chiefs losing to the Cincinnati Bengals, the Bills take the number 1 spot there. And guys, let's talk about the draft. I think it's time. We're not going to be talking about players and who the Jets can draft, but we are going to be talking about the top 5 picks because I think it's very interesting. One, we know who's 1 and 2, Houston, Chicago. They're the worst teams in the NFL. Makes sense, right? But then picks 3, 4, and 5 are all picks that were first-round picks that were traded away by their respective teams to other teams. Right now, if the season were to end, right now, Denver would be the number 3 pick, and they traded that to Seattle for Russell Wilson because they thought that they were a good football team. And Seattle, who would normally be picking if the season ended right now and we didn't, and everybody loses, like the lower seeded team would lose in the playoffs, Seattle would be picking 20. So not only do they get a top 5 pick for a team that very clearly needs a top 5 pick, they still get their late first round pick at 20. Absolutely phenomenal. The LA Rams obviously trade their first round pick away for Matthew Stafford, and Detroit, a team that is losing games and they shouldn't, is winning games when they should be losing games. Boom, has a top 5 pick, and they have the 15th overall pick. That's 2 great picks. That's 2 great players. And then obviously you have New Orleans, who traded away their first round pick to Philadelphia. In that deal, I don't remember what that was for. That was to come up for Chris Olave, I believe. Was that the Chris Olave trade? I don't remember, but New Orleans doesn't have their first round pick. They traded that to Philadelphia, expecting to be competitive. They are not competitive. They are 4-9, and Philly, a team that arguably should be competing for a Super Bowl and would be one of the 30 picks right now if the season were to end and you just took the highest seed. They would probably be 32, right? Because they have the best record. Is picking into the top 5. Carolina's there, Jacksonville's there, Arizona, Indianapolis, and Atlanta rounds out the top 10. But it's interesting because this is a pretty heavy quarterback draft in the sense of there's a lot of quarterback talent that could go in the first round, and you've got a lot of teams that could take a quarterback. So like Houston's probably taking a quarterback first overall no matter what. Chicago doesn't need a quarterback, so they can go ahead and get the best skilled position player or the best player available. It's probably going to be Will Anderson. And then you have Seattle at 3, and even though Geno Smith is doing well, are you really going to bank on Geno moving forward as like the guy? It's an interesting conversation to have. The draft is going to be fun this year for New York Jets fans, and I actually can't wait to do draft coverage. I haven't started watching my guys and evaluating them or anything like that, and I am really waiting for Dom C's draft guide. Guys, absolutely. He already said that he's going to be giving me one. I don't care. I'm going to be purchasing one because Dom C is one of the smarter guys when it comes to evaluating players. I really, really trust his opinion. And even when we disagree on players, I know that his evaluation is coming from an intelligent place, not a place of just ignorance, which is what a lot of people do, right? Like a lot of people, a great example of this was Kyle Hamilton, right? A lot of people were really, really high on Kyle Hamilton from a place of ignorance, just because everybody else said that you should be high on, and then no one really watched the tape on Kyle Hamilton to be like, where are the elite traits? There's one good play. So there's that kind of conversation. And I really, really like what Dom C does. I can't wait to get his draft guide and to do that. And this is going to be a really fun year because the New York Jets are going to be picking anywhere from, 16 to like 24, and that's a really, really fun place because the board is going to fall in a million different ways when you get to 22, and then that's going to give us infinite possibility to trade up if there's a player that we all kind of fall in love with that we want to trade up for, the same way we fell in love with Elijah Vera Tucker in that draft. Or there's always the possibility that, you know what, we're really good on this roster at a lot of different places. Maybe you don't take the top, the 16 to 22 pick, and you trade back into you let someone come up to go get the guy that they maybe fell in love with. It's a lot of fun. I'm really, really excited. I can't wait to go over the players, especially because there's so many places we can go, and there's so many. I don't think we have a singular need on this team. And what I mean by that is last year, we all singularly focused on the fact that in the first round, we needed to walk away with an edge and a wide receiver. And we did. And Sauce Gardner, obviously. Thank you, Joe Douglas, for being amazing. But we all honed in on that because those were needs for this football team. We needed a wide receiver. We needed an edge rusher. And then this year, going into this draft, I don't think the Jets have a singular massive need. I would like a linebacker. I would like a safety. I would like an interior offensive lineman. I would like a tackle. I would like another linebacker. I would like an interior defensive lineman, but we don't need that. If we can bring back Sheldon Rankins and he plays the way that he does, man, I think our interior defensive line looks good. CJ Mosley's been playing great, and if we can fix his cap hit so that he's not like a $20, $35 million cap hit next year, I have no problem bringing CJ Mosley back and then Quincy and Quan. Bring them all back. I like the way that they did. And then we can bring in a developmental guy, and that's great. I think we've got enough tackles on this team to be competitive next year. And so we don't need to spend a first-round pick on a tackle, in my opinion. I like our interior offensive line, but I'd like to bring in a developmental guard/center to eventually take over for Connor McGovern, because I'm probably looking at giving Connor McGovern a 3-year deal with an out after 2. And that's just kind of how I look at it. Safety, we got to find a replacement for LaMarcus Joyner, who I think will be back on this team next year, but we've got to find a long-term solution there, because LaMarcus Joyner is 32, I think, next year, and he's just not a long-term solution. And it gives us a lot of options, and we can really just let the board fall and just take the best player available, and that's really it. And no matter what player it is, it's going to be a good pick. And it's funny because, the only player that I wouldn't take if they were the best player available is corner, because I think we're 4 deep at corner. I like Brandon Eccles. I love Michael Carter II. I love DJ Reed, and I love Sauce. So that's the only position that I look at and I go, I probably don't want to touch that in this draft, if I'm being honest. But outside of that, every position is up in the air. Even quarterback, there's a lot of people we're like, hey, maybe the Jets take a quarterback in round 2 and a developmental guy. Dude, there's so many ways and so many things that we can do and that this New York Jets team can go. The kid from Florida is really interesting for me, just because he needs time to develop and he needs to sit, right? And if we're going to be moving on from Zach Wilson, and that's 100% what's going to happen, I think we should at least try to address quarterback in the draft. Not in the first round, but maybe in the second or maybe in the third. We don't have massive needs, like I just said. It's interesting. No more draft talk. We're done with that. Let's talk and end the Around the NFL segment. Let's talk about the New York Jets versus the Minnesota Vikings. Let's talk about my key takeaways, things that I saw that were good, the things that I saw that were bad. We're going to do all of those videos right now. And then that's really it. Obviously, the New York Jets, we didn't win against the Minnesota Vikings, and that absolutely hurts because I looked at this game as a must-win. I don't think 10 wins is enough to make it to the playoffs. I know a lot of people disagree with me, but with the AFC and how stacked up the AFC is right now, I don't think it's enough. That's just the reality of the situation, in my opinion. And so when we have a game that's winnable, when we have a game where the New York Jets are objectively the better football team on the field, in almost every measurable statistic except for one, we're the better football team, it sucks that you lose that game. And I think there's a couple of people to blame, and there's a couple of things to do, but I'm not going to play the blame game. I'm going to talk about my 5 key takeaways from this football game. And I think number 1, let's start on a positive here, has to be we found another running back in Zonovan Bam Knight. I'm going to eat my receipts here. If you look up my videos and you look in the past, I said that Zonovan Bam Knight should not be on this roster. I did not believe that he was good enough to be on this roster. I thought that he needed a redshirt year to really, really slim down and really develop his running game and his running style for our offensive scheme, because I just don't think that they matched up his running style and our scheme. That being said, he did all of those things much, 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 much faster than I expected. Zonovan Knight, if you look at pictures and videos of him now versus him in the preseason, he has lost weight. He's gotten faster, he's gotten quicker, and that is a true testament to how good of a player and the drive and the motivation that this kid has. He is a massive bright spot on our offense, and I am really, really excited about this running back room moving forward, because now I look at it and I go, we've got Breece Hall, home run hitting running back, Zonovan Knight, who's a double or a triple every single time he gets the ball. We've got Michael Carter, he's a standing double every single time he touches the ball. Ty Johnson, who's incredibly dynamic, in my opinion. James Robinson, who has been disappointing, but he's probably going to be a guy that's going to be brought back to compete. We've got a lot of really good running backs on this roster for the future, and I love it. I'm going to take a swig. Been talking for 33 minutes. Thank you for listening. If you guys have left here, if you guys are still here, leave a comment letting me know that you're still here. Got it. Double lift. Say it. Just put that in the comment section. Double lift. If you're here and you're still listening. And I appreciate you guys. Key takeaway number 2 is our defense. Our defense needs to be better at staying at 100%. Our defense is one of the best defenses in the NFL. I'm not trying to take anything away from our defense, but I think we lost this game because the defense didn't hold in the second quarter, and that's it. If we were to be able to hold them to 18 points, which was a fact that I had mentioned and a number that I had mentioned before the game, we win this game. But giving up that 17 points basically for free in the second quarter and then letting them kind of lap us and double us for the second half and then getting the ball back in the third quarter was a big problem. And I think one of the reasons that we lost this game, there was much, much bigger reasons that we lost this game that I'll talk about in a second. But one of the things that I'm noticing with this defense, like the New York Jets defense, is that they have a tendency to start slow and then ramp up. If this defense can start at 100% and stay at 100%, I think that we'll be so dominant that there's not going to be a team in the NFL that's going to be able to keep up with us. Even when our offense is struggling the way that it did against Minnesota, our defense is so good. We frustrated the crap out of Kirk Cousins, 21 of 35 for 173 yards. We kept Justin Jefferson under 50 yards. They didn't have a single receiver or pass catcher go over 50 yards. And absolutely what I said that we did. Our defense was all over the passes. 5 passes defended, which was insane. I had 9 QB hits plus 2 sacks. 11 QB pressures is fantastic for this football team. And so I'd like to see more of those passes defended turn it into interceptions. I'd love to see more of those QB hits turned into sacks, but I feel like our defense started off slow, and because they started off slow, the Minnesota Vikings were able to build up ahead of steam, get ahead of the team, and then we somehow put ourselves in a situation where we have to win at the end. Another key takeaway is that there's something fundamentally wrong in the coaching in the wide receiver room right now. Garrett Wilson had himself one hell of a day, 8 catches, 162 yards. That's fantastic. But when we look at the ratio of balls thrown versus balls caught, and I don't mean like there are bad throws, right? Like Mike White didn't have a perfect game. But when we talk about the fact that these balls are hitting you in the hands or they're in your shoulders, I don't care if it's a front shoulder or a back shoulder, and Mike White is throwing these balls accurately, if the ball hits you, catch the ball, period. Garrett Wilson, while he did have himself a game, could have had a much, much better game. He was targeted 15 times. He only caught 8 of them. Corey Davis was targeted 10 times. He only caught 5 of them. And he led to an interception, like he was directly the fault of an interception. Ty Johnson was pretty good, 7 of 6. CJ Uzama, 1 of 1. Zonovan Knight, 5 of 5. Braxton Berrios, 3 of 2. And I'm not going to sit here and complain. Braxton Berrios should have caught that ball. He catches that ball 9 times out of 10. It's just unfortunate that the one time he doesn't catch it is in a situation where it's a game-winning catch, and we need him to catch it. Tyler Conklin, 2 of 7. There has to be some repercussions after that, because he cost us a big chunkage and yardage in that game. And they were hitting him square in the hands constantly, and he wasn't catching them. It's time to see Jeremy Ruckert. It's time to see Kenny Yeboah. Let's see what these guys can look like in the pass game, because as much as I love Tyler Conklin, and I thought that he was going to be tight end 1 on this team, like, I'm not loving what I'm seeing in the pass catching ability from either Tyler Conklin or CJ Uzama. And like the problem with that is that CJ Uzama is our number 2 pass catcher when it comes into total yardage. Garrett Wilson leads it, and the second one is Tyler Conklin. And the one thing that I'm realizing is like when they get the ball in their hands, they like bobble it for a second, almost every single time. And that frightens the crap out of me. I'd really like to see someone in the tight end position with secure hands. Maybe that's Jeremy Ruckert. I really like what we saw from Jeremy Ruckert coming out of the draft. You know, I liked his tape, and he has that ability. Maybe it's time. Maybe it's time to give Jeremy Ruckert a shot. I don't know. But we got to do better. Elijah Moore targeted 6 times, only caught twice, and then Denzel Mims targeted once, no catches. We have to do better pass catching. Just period. That's it. And I guess my last takeaway from this game is that, no. Okay, let me say this. I got two more takeaways because I'm going to say something that's going to get a lot of you angry, and then I'm going to not backpedal, but I'm going to get to what I'm saying. One of my takeaways was that I think the reason we lost this game is because of the two Mikes, Mike White and Mike LaFleur. Mike White had himself great yardage, 31 of 57, 369 yards. I'm not going to count the two interceptions against him. One of them is 100% on Corey Davis. The other one is like the last play. It's fourth down. You have to try something, so you just, right? Not even counting those against him. But 31 of 57 is not good enough. And I know that a lot of dropped passes. I get that. But 31 of 57 is not good enough. That's a 54% completion percentage. It's not good enough. You got to be above 67, 68. And I know that a big chunk of that is the wide receivers. But you're the one running the offense. You're the one throwing the balls. You have to help your wide receivers and put them into better positions to catch that. The New York Jets wide receivers weren't creating separation. That's not a Mike White issue. But if you're going to throw into a wide receiver that's not creating much separation, you got to put them in the best position. And while Mike White was incredibly accurate, I feel like there were a couple of throws that he made were a little bit hard on the wide receivers and that. But that's not the point. Because I think the New York Jets, Mike LaFleur and Mike White were excellent from our 1 yard line all the way up to their 21 yard line. We were fantastic. 369 yards shows that. 120 rushing yards shows that. We had almost 500 plus all-purpose yards on offense. That looks like an offense that is chugging away. 1 for 6 in the red zone. Mike LaFleur called by far and away his worst red zone calling games in his career, and he should be called out on it. He didn't, and he wasn't good enough with his play calling. But also, you're the quarterback. You need to run that offense. 1 for 6 is not good enough. You can check out of things. You can audible things. You can transition things. You can at the point of attack at the huddle. You're in charge of the offense. You're gonna get the most credit. You're also gonna get the most blame. 1 of 6 in the red zone is not good enough, and that's just the reality of the situation. If Mike White and Mike LaFleur were both better in the red zone, if they were just as effective as they were in the red zone, as they were when they were playing at the rest of the field, and like literally from the 1 yard, our 1 to their 21, if we were anywhere there, if they could just be as effective as they were in that part of the field in the red zone, this would have been a blowout of a game. But Mike LaFleur, Mike White, not good enough in the red zone, and they're a big reason we lost that game. Now, key takeaway number 5 is we found our quarterback for the rest of the year. Mike White, in my opinion, has played well enough in 2 games to where I don't see how he loses his job. I wanted to see what he looked like against Minnesota, because Minnesota's a better defense than Chicago, but they're not good. And to the point to where I'm willing to forgive whatever we see from the Buffalo game and not be in a situation where he's on a short leash, is what I'm saying. He's on one of those extendo leashes. I'm cool with giving him the next 5 games, honestly, and benching Zach and then saying, that's it. I know that Robert Saleh mentioned that he wants to still have Zach play, but I honestly think that's just trying to keep the young man engaged in practice and in team meetings and things like that. And I don't see a situation where you can legitimately pull Mike White out, especially if you're not activating Zach Wilson, because a great scenario would be like if you go up 20 points against the Detroit Lions or the Jacksonville Jaguars, you run Zach Wilson just to see what you have and air it out and just throw the ball a ton just to see and have him evaluate defenses against a bad team, right? He's staying inactive. He's staying as QB3. Joe Flacco's the backup, which I'm not a fan of. That being said, Mike White has earned the opportunity to play out the rest of the season. Now, next year, that's a different conversation. I think that the quarterback who's going to be starting under center currently is not on the roster if we're talking about the quarterback next year. I don't know if Mike White comes back. He's playing great, but I think that there's going to be better options out there, and I would like to address or maybe see some of those options. Limited ceiling on Mike White and all. I'd like a guy who has a little bit higher of a ceiling. And yeah, there's that. Talking about that game. Let's give some love to some players for the New York Jets that don't get enough love. Greg Zuerlein, man, 5 of 5 for field goals, 100%. 60-yard field goal, and he was halfway up the uprights. He could have taken that from 69. Guy was insane. 1 for 1 on the extra point. We only scored 1 touchdown. Braden Mann, I think, had himself a pretty good game, in my opinion. Special teams played really, really well. I liked what I saw from our special teams unit. And that's that. Guys, I'm going to put this up here again. Because again, we didn't get any calls. There's the phone number, 689-999-0430. Give that number a call. Leave a voicemail. Ask your questions. Put your opinions, whatever it is that you want. It's there. Leave a voicemail. Talk to me. I want to make this show interactive, and I want the last 15 minutes of the show, I'd like for it to be an hour, to be where we go over your voicemails, your comments, your things like that. So let me know in the comment section and give that phone number a call. Guys, thank you so much for stopping by. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Talking Jets with Tigo podcast. Thanks for hanging out. Thanks for being a Talking Jets with Tigo subscriber. If you're not a subscriber, go hit that sub button. It's free, helps out the channel, and we're doing a 2,000 subscriber giveaway, and we're really, really close to that. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Follow me on Twitter. Tweet me. Do all those things. And last but not least, go Jets.